This is Annie Grace, and you're listening to This Naked Mind podcast, where without judgment, pain, or rules, we explore the role of alcohol in our lives and culture. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Annie Grace, author of This Naked Mind, and today I'm here with Emma. And Emma came to me. She has such an exciting story because I think specifically because of her background and just her success in life and her empowerment and decisions. And so, Emma, here you are. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Annie. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so fun. So we're just going to kind of go through a bunch of questions and, pretend it's just us talking, like nobody's listening. We're just here.
Okay.
So kind of, what did your life look like before you really started questioning your drinking? And I guess more importantly, like where did you even start with you drinking wise?
Yeah, so I've had a very lucky, good life. I can't complain about anything. I was raised in London, England, and I came over to the States when I was like 18. And I had relatives in my house that were drinking. I had alcoholism. I would say I grew up around a lot of alcohol. And I was always sensitive to the fact that I might have a problem. Regardless of being worried about that, I still, when I was 14, I started going out on Saturday nights with my friends and drinking. And so very early on, I started drinking. And you'd have to say binge drinking because, Saturday night. And so that, and I was drinking quite a lot for a teenager, early on, although it would just be on the weekends kind of thing.
And did you like it at the time? Was it pretty?
I did. Yeah. I was just, I was kind of a wild child.
Right.
And back in the 80s, everyone smoked. I smoked too, it was bad, So, it was just, it's just what we did, and especially in England too, is probably more of that culture. But when I came over to the States, I was still kind of drinking off and on. I knew that I needed to be careful with it just because of what I'd seen growing up a little bit. And then, I think I was maybe in my mid-20s when I actually went to my first AA meeting. I just wanted to quit. And I was in and out of AA from like 25 to early 30s.
And what sort of triggered that first meeting? Was it this?
I always fear of turning out like certain relatives, and just like having a problem. And I have to say that AA is a wonderful program for many people, but here I was, this like 20-year-old person, blonde chick in a meeting, and it was just like I tried to fit in, to feel like I fit in, and maybe that's my problem, and everyone was so nice, but I just didn't have the bottoming out. I just didn't want to drink, Right. So that went on, but I got like 5 years of sobriety, and during that time, clear-headed as I was, I ended up getting my Ph.D. In a science, and so that was good. I finished that up, and I don't know that I would have finished that up had I not been sober. So that was really good. But then I graduated, and I hung up my shingle as a medical writer, where I write about medicine and science. And in my early 30s, I met my first husband, and he's like, "Oh, you can drink. I'll take care of you. Don't worry." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just gonna have wine." I always just wanted to be able to drink a glass of wine with dinner. That has been my goal up until recently. It didn't necessarily happen that way. So here I am. The freelance business goes really well. It's still going well, and it's just up. And let's see. I never drank every day, but that's because I made myself not drink every day. Like it was always like I just was always concerned with it, always obsessed with how much I was drinking, but yet I would still binge drink. And by binge drinking for me, like I think the definition is like 4 drinks, and that's just me getting started. Okay, right. So binge drinking to me, like I have this mechanism in my body where I can drink, and then I just pass out and I shut down, which is fortunate because I don't poison myself other than just, being shut down. Like luckily I never went past a certain point. But anyway, so that's anyway. So then ended up getting divorced. Became, living by myself with my daughter. I have a daughter, but she was 7 years old at the time. And so I was starting to drink. Like when I got divorced, it was like I was happy about it because he was a nice guy, not the right guy. But I was like, oh, no, I can drink what I want because nobody's here to watch me drink, So I'm just drinking wine by myself every night with my young daughter who's gone to bed. And luckily nothing bad happened out of that, thank God. But yeah, I mean, I just started drinking more and more. But I would always function, get up the next day, that kind of thing. Then when I was, then I got remarried in 2013 to my current husband, and we both have a lot of fun drinking together. And he drinks in a different way than I do. Like I consider him like if there is such a thing as social drinker, but I would always, drink to excess, and so I have like in the last year, I would say we would go out like Friday, Saturday night would be the time to really hit the bottle, whatever it is, go out, drink every Friday, Saturday night. Of course, the whole weekend shot because you feel like crap on Saturday and Sunday. And then also during the week, I would just have probably a couple of drinks, but that I started drinking rum, which I always try to stick to wine, but now I'm on hard liquor, so it got to be rum and more. And I started forgetting portions of the evening, like blacking out more and more. And also blacking out more and more, I think that would be the main thing. Like I was starting to forget portions of what was going on. So, but I knew from my past experience in AA, as great as it is, I did not want to sit around in meetings. I just didn't. I just didn't want to sit around and say, oh, I'm an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that's great, but so when here's what happened though. Okay, a couple of things led up to me reading your book because I had to have the impulse to search for your book. Right. So the first thing that happened was I went to the doctor for an annual checkup. I'm as healthy as an ox. I always have been, but my liver enzymes were elevated. And I'm like, and I had just come off some trip that I'd been on drinking every day. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a red flag to me. The doctor didn't say anything, but I knew inside what was going on. And then I went out one night. It was probably like 4 weeks ago now, but there's a rooftop bar that we like to go to. And I had a few drinks. And there's steps to come down from the rooftop, which is like really dangerous for people that have been drinking. Seriously. But anyway, I was like not feeling, quite sober, and I fell and I held on to the railings and caught myself, thank goodness. But like, what if I hadn't caught myself? Like, could I have broken my neck? Like how many wake up calls do I need? Or like, what really bad stuff? Can I swear? Yeah, what really bad shit has to happen to me before, I get the wake-up call that this is not good for me. Mm-hmm. Also, my daughter, who's about to be 14, has seen me drunk many times, and I regret that. Okay, and so the final straw was we were coming home on a Saturday night, and my friends. So my husband was driving, and he was, I don't know, he was probably close to the limit, maybe a little bit over. But he was driving, and my daughter's friend's parent brought my daughter home and stopped us as we got out of the car. And he said it, and I don't fault him, but he said in a really, really diplomatic way. He says, I wanted to bring your daughter home rather than you picking her up because, I used to do all that and drink and stuff and drive, and I just didn't want her to be going through that. And I'm like, wow. My husband, of course, is like, I could drive. And I was like, oh, God. I felt really like he was so diplomatic, but I felt inside I just was like, you know what, he's got a point. That's just not cool
Right.
at all. So I was like, okay, well, AA is not the answer for me. I can't go back to that, but let me see what's going on online, look up alcohol and stuff. And so your book popped up and it had like, of course, like the others had a few stars, 5-star reviews, and like yours had like 700 5-star reviews or something like that. I was like, okay, that must be the book to get. And I also liked it because it said control your alcohol, because I don't know that I was quite ready to quit. So that was very good that it's sort of leads you in to the idea that you should like not drink at all. So that worked out really well. So, Sunday morning, so the Saturday the 8th was that night. And then Sunday morning, Sunday, the whole day I spent reading that book. And I'm like, I'm not drinking. I'm not going to drink anymore, because one by one, that book, your book, The Naked Mind, it smashed any illusion that I might have that alcohol adds to my life. And that's what the problem was.
Right.
Because I thought that I would be deprived from not drinking. But, I can't see how it adds to my life in any way. Like, not even stress relief or anything. So it's kind of like, I can drink if I want to, but it took away the desire to drink, which, I mean, it's a freaking miracle.
And it's so interesting, I
It's a
think,
miracle.
because, there's so much about the physical dependence that we talk about and that we actually focus on, this physical dependence, especially, doctors, you mentioned going to your doctor, and, most often your doctors aren't even going to ask you about how much you drink. And
Yeah,
if they
and then you're
do,
gonna lie.
you're going to lie, right?
Right.
So it's this thing that is the number one preventable cause of death in the United States right now, number
Yep.
one. And we talk a lot about the opiate epidemic. We talk academic epidemic. We talk a lot about all of these other things. When the one thing we talk about, and the reason is probably because the doctors themselves are also drinking, and we just don't really think about this in terms of, would I be happier without it? Like, we don't ask that question. We ask
No.
this terrifying question, am I an alcoholic, or is there something wrong with me? And that's horrible. And really, it's just that alcohol is addictive to humankind, not
Yes.
just to a few people. But one thing you said that I think is really interesting is that taking away the desire for it, you can have somebody within 5 to 7 days, the physical withdrawal is over. You are detoxed. Alcohol is out of your system. Scientifically, and I'm sure you can expand on this yourself, you are not going to be in a physical state of needing alcohol. Yet people go for years and years and years feeling massively deprived. And so much of that is the mental. And we don't talk about, let's work on taking away the mental piece, the desire for it. So, yeah.
That's absolutely right. And it was just such a revelation to me that I didn't have to feel shame because I'm an alcoholic. Do I really have to label myself? Can I just like quit drinking? And I gotta say, like I've been out with friends who drink, and it is very threatening. Just
Yeah.
people that drink. I'm not judging anybody. I mean, you can drink. That's fine. I don't have any judgment on it. But like for me, is it okay if I don't drink? I mean, really? It's like not
Yeah.
okay in this society. Everyone like, you know,
So what
it's
do you do in
weird.
those situations? How have you been handling it?
Well, one friend, I mean, she thought she was drinking, and I was just sitting there. I'm just sitting there not drinking, and I'm not judging, but like it was projected onto me that I was patronizing her or something, and I'm like, so that was a weird thing. So I don't know about that, but I also went out with some friends and ordered a glass of wine just so that to sit there in front of me. And then I asked my husband to take some sips once in a while so the level would go down. And that worked
Yes.
beautifully. Like
Right.
I didn't have to say anything about why I wasn't drinking or nobody noticed. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
so
I don't know.
unfortunate that that's the way, but I mean, I totally
It really
understand. I
is.
remember being at my first wedding, alcohol free, and ordering alcohol-free beer just so I wouldn't get all those bazillions of questions. And then, it ended up making me feel really gassy. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this probably isn't my answer, but because I can't not, like,
Yeah.
if I have it in my hand, no matter what it is, whether it's coffee or water, I'm a very hydrated person these days. I'm
I
gonna keep on
Yeah,
sipping.
exactly. I think I ordered 2 big bottles of Pellegrino when I went out to dinner the other night, like cute big ones. So, that's just whether it's wine or, whatever, I'll drink it. But one of the things, I mean, I would like it to be, and I think you're just starting a movement with this, but I would love it if you could just go somewhere and not drink and not have to feel bad about that or not have to
Yeah.
defend yourself against it. I mean, like you say, in your book, if you stop eating eggs, nobody questions you.
Yeah.
If you stop
Yeah.
drinking coffee, that's great. But, alcohol, man.
Yeah, there's a comedian who recently did a little skit on it, and he said, you know, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to try, but he was just so funny because he doesn't drink, and he was just making fun of this social phenomenon that you go out and you tell people that you're not drinking, and it's almost as if you
Like,
told them you've come down with some like horrible thing, and then there's the also implied judgment, which is just so painful. I wish we could brainstorm together and think of just this one phrase that had the right level of kind of like non-threatening, cutesy, put people at their ease, but also, one thing I started doing early on was, kind of really beating myself up. Like I was very similar in the sense that, I didn't have this massive rock bottom. Like I certainly had instances like you're talking about with the person telling you about the driving and whatnot, where it was like, okay, that's not cool. Like that's a big kind of aha moment for me, but there was no
yeah,
major crisis. And so people were like, well, why you didn't really have a problem? And I think people even find it harder because if they could see that you did have a problem and they can put you in that box, then they can separate themselves from you, and then they can say, okay, well, I'm not her, I'm not doing what she's doing, so I'm still okay and I'm safe. And I think the problem really stems from a massive level of insecurity with their own drinking, because we do have this internal battle going on within us, no matter who we
yeah,
are. And
yep,
I'm sure you're familiar with the DSM, the diagnosis of all mental health diseases, both here and in the UK, I believe uses it as well. And in the DSM, the definition for alcohol use disorder means you have to answer yes to 2 of these 12 questions. 2 of the 12 questions are these, and this just blows me away because this describes everybody I know. Do you have to drink more than you used to get the same effect? So have you built up
yeah,
tolerance?
yeah,
And do you have occasions where you drink more than you intend? And everybody I know falls into that
everybody.
category. And I think on
Yeah,
some level, we all know that. We all know that what we're doing, right? And so when we see somebody elevating themselves and rising themselves up, and we know that they weren't, it's easy for us to see the person who's like, look, I became an alcoholic, and we can feel comfortable around that person. I mean, I'm speaking
yeah,
from my own experience. I remember my friend started going to AA, and I said, so do you think I have a problem? She goes, no, I'm an alcoholic. It's me. And I was like, okay, sweet, power to me. I'm going to choke some down, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I just kind of felt
I know.
really safe because of that. And that was really interesting. I wish we could think of something that
Right.
was just this phrase that isn't that we're not to be pitied, right? We're the
Right.
ones who escaped this. We're the ones
We're
who
the ones not
found this
drinking,
freedom,
and
right?
yet we have to defend ourselves. Yeah,
Right. But also to like
exactly.
not, I think people, just by not drinking, you're generating so much awareness and consciousness in people of their own behavior, which is brilliant that you
Yeah,
don't even have to say anything. But what could we say to just like let people know that it's still me, I'm still fun. I'm still going to giggle with you and have a good time. And, but not admit to a problem that we no longer have.
well, I think there needs to be a critical mass, and I think that this will come about in the next few years, where it's just, it becomes much more socially acceptable to not drink. I mean, it's a shame it has to be that way, but yeah, no, it has to be that way. There needs to be like a a bunch of people that do that. Because right now it's like 80%. How many? It's like 80% of people drink.
Yeah.
And everybody that drinks can potentially have a problem with it.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's gone up
everybody.
massively in the last, just the
Yeah.
last 4 years. There was an article that came out recently, and it's just increased so crazily, and especially with women. I mean, women
Yeah.
are on this. We are catching up. It used to be that men were really, 60% of men and only a certain percent of women, I think 30, but now women are just skyrocketing up there to catch
Yes.
up with our drinking levels, which it is that way. I mean, if you look at kind of evolution of cultural norm, pretty much you almost have to come to this crisis point before people start. It wasn't, and I'm so thankful that my crisis was, I feel like I got off the train before it was going into the tunnel, much less before it went off the rails, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm so thankful for that. And I feel like my personal kind of mission is to help people get off the train well before it crashes.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of people off the train, the people that you're talking about, the 80% who don't drink, a lot of the people who don't drink are people who have seen that train through to its, end and said, okay, now I can never drink again. And that,
Right.
that
We
paints
don't
a
want to
really
get
sad
there.
picture for people because,
Yeah.
you think, okay, in order to not drink, I have to have gone through quite a bit of misery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to have to be some sort of cultural shift. And I will say, you're in early days, but I will say time helps too. I think that people just have to get used to it. I think one
Yeah.
thing that
It's fine.
I noticed is just being going to the same things, being around the same people once or twice, and then it's just kind of like old news,
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, I can't think of one thing that is made better by alcohol. Like even I've had a better time going out without drinking. I'm clearer. I feel great the next day. Like I play a lot of tennis, and I was wondering, I've been playing tennis like 5 years, and like why aren't I really getting better? I know I'm getting older, but like why aren't I getting better at tennis? Well, since I quit drinking, I've had about 3 matches, and my game has just like because my brain isn't like soaked in alcohol, my coordination is better.
right, of
Like even
course.
though I wasn't drunk or anything while I was playing, but I mean like hungover maybe, but yeah, even that, and then just for work, that was I manage a bunch of writers, but I couldn't imagine doing a bunch of the writing myself like I used to. But now my brain's cleared up. It's like much more. I can get my brain in it again. I mean, that's scary to think of that, but it's true.
Right, right. And so in your
So,
experience in, being a PhD and being a writer in the medical industry, what
mm.
are, from just that perspective, do you have any kind of thoughts or observations on kind of where our culture is at and where we're at from a medical perspective?
Oh my gosh, I just think, and it's more psychological really, but I think there's just so much shame about it all. First of all, shame about how much you drink. We all drink, we all drink a lot more than like, what's one drink? What is the recommended? I mean, like, what's the guideline?
It's a
It's
half
like
a
one
pint
drink a
is one
week.
unit of alcohol.
What is,
A half a
what is
pint.
that?
Yeah, right.
Who
And so
drinks
then the
that?
recommended guideline is, I think it's 15 units a week, so it's like less than a drink a day.
I mean, who drinks that? I don't know
Right.
who that drinks that. So we're all like drinking way more. And then if we could just have a way where it's seen more as kind of a self-improvement thing. I mean, in the US, we're all about self-improvement, working out, eating right. So why not like quit drinking? Why can't quitting drinking be a part of that?
Right.
That's how I look at it. It's like the biggest self-improvement thing I've ever done, you know, is to not drink.
Yeah, it's
So
literally a
I
cornerstone habit. It's like once you do this,
cornerstone.
everything else, it's like that big domino that if you knock down that domino,
Absolutely.
everything else is going to kind of fall into place. It's unreal.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to lose like most women, especially in their 50s. You start putting on a little weight, and it's like, so if I could lose like 15 pounds, that would be great. Like just from not drinking, I will lose that 15 pounds.
Yeah.
It's been the bane of my existence,
Right,
For
right, for
like,
sure.
once in a while I'll lose it, then I'll put it back on. It's just like but not drinking, I can eat even a little more and I'm going to lose weight.
Yeah,
So it's
that's amazing.
incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, just that, and then, but I would love it. Like I think in the next 10 years, it is going to reach a crisis point, and I'm hoping that it will get to be where it's just that makes sense just for a bunch of us to all quit drinking, and that we'll have more company in that,
Yeah.
and we
I
won't have
think
to feel bad about it.
there's some really cool things that have been happening with the younger generation. So the under
Mm,
25, under 26 is, the percentage of that generation that don't drink is
yeah.
much higher than any other generation. And, I've even heard quotes like, it's my parents' drug. Like I saw them. I'm not going there. And then I
That's
think
good.
also there's an element of social media in it too, right? Like nobody
Yeah.
wants to have that video of them drunk. So their lives are almost recorded nonstop, whether it's
Yes.
through Snapchat or Instagram. And
Yeah.
so they are very conscious of how they appear, and they know alcohol will damage that. And so I think that there's a really positive trend in that, people just looking at it kind of objectively and saying, well, why exactly would you do that? What would be the point?
Right. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool.
That's great.
So, a few more questions. This has been just so awesome, so fascinating.
Thank you.
What sort of, what would you give in terms of, I have a new thing starting, and it's this 30-day alcohol experiment. And my intention is really to just lower the barrier to entry. I feel like lots of people are questioning their drinking. Millions and millions and millions of people are questioning their drinking. In fact, I think probably 95% of drinkers have times where they say, "Oh, I wish I would have drank less." And so at some point or another, they're wishing they would have drank less. And I want to just lower it so that it's not this scary black and white all or nothing thing, that it becomes, okay, let's experiment. Let's try it out. Let's see if what Emma's saying is true. Let's see if what Annie's saying is true. And so I'm launching this experiment. I'm really excited about it. I have 1,000 people in kind of the beta group, and I just asked them this one question. I said, what's your biggest fear about going alcohol free for 30 days? And the biggest fear is, there's all sorts of fears. They fear the social experience. I think that's really a high one on the list. They fear not being able to kind of connect, not deal with boredom, not being able to sleep, all of these things that I'm sure you can relate to. But the biggest fear is the fear really of failure. And I was just wondering, if you were to go back and kind of talk to yourself and tell yourself a little bit about what life is like now, like what would you say?
What, when I was drinking, like what it's like now that I'm not drinking?
Yeah. So if you're going to go back to your drinking self, the self that was afraid, the self that was like, I'm not going to be able to do
Yeah.
it, and I'm afraid of doing it, what would you say?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah. So like I work very hard, like during the week. It's stressful sometimes. And so Friday night, it's like, oh, let's go out and have some drinks, and we're gonna have fun. And so, here I've worked a long, stressful week, and you're gonna take that away from me.
Yeah.
So what I would tell myself is that alcohol actually causes stress when you drink it. You don't think it does, but it does. It takes away from the experience. And so that thought that alcohol adds anything has to be taken away. That's what you got to crush. Like
Yeah.
the people that miss it, like I'm on your the community, and your this Naked Mind community, and sometimes people are like, oh, I'm really jonesing after a drink. I really want, like, that's what you've got to get past. You've got to crush the illusion that it actually adds anything, and you're going to have more enjoyment. You've
Yeah.
got to give yourself that chance.
Yeah.
It's hard because you don't think it. I know that. I've been there, And then there's something like when you have stress and problems, it's like the one thing alcohol does do for sure. If you drink enough, it does obliterate you. You'll pass out. But the trouble is, you wake up and you still
Right.
have the same issues. So it really doesn't fix anything. Plus, you have a hangover, so it's harder to deal with anything.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like, but it's so hard. Like, I'd be like, okay, whatever. I'd be like, alcohol becomes a friend to you in a way. It becomes something that you rely on. But it's not. It's it's only something that takes away.
Well, it's
I like to
interesting
pick,
because alcohol, so it's just like smoking a cigarette. You smoke a cigarette and then you go through a withdrawal. And then you quickly, feel that withdrawal, you feel slightly uncomfortable, and so you want to smoke the next cigarette. So people become chain smokers really quickly. But with
yeah,
alcohol, most of the withdrawal we go through is when we're asleep, because we drink in the evening, and that's what's socially acceptable. And so a lot of that withdrawal we don't feel. And also alcohol kind of anesthetizes your ability to to feel emotions, for one thing, which is a big reason people drink, but also your ability to feel sick. So you feel sick the next day, where you should have really felt sick during the alcohol, but the anesthetic effect of alcohol has worn off while you're sleeping. So then you wake up feeling what you would have felt if alcohol wasn't an anesthetic. So, you're going through this cycle, and then you wake up, and unfortunately the thing that takes that away is more anesthetic. And whether it's, relieving that withdrawal, and then we get duped into believing that it's that withdrawal feels like pleasure to us. Of course it does. It takes away our anxiety. It takes away that level of discomfort that we're feeling, and it makes us feel better and relaxed, but only better than where alcohol knocked you down to. So, I heard it really well yesterday, is like, if you have this scale of 100 degrees of human happiness, and that first drink can bring you up 105, because it can anesthetize the bad feelings, it can turn off your brain, it just dulls and numbs your senses. But then as soon as that drink wears off, you're at 100 and you're at 99. And then you go up to 104, and then 98, and then you go up to 103, and then 90, and you down and down and down. And then over time, you just really aren't enjoying it. The only thing you're enjoying is the relief of the craving and the relief of the withdrawal. And if we could just know that, like that fact by itself, I think people's perspective would just completely be changed. But it's not apparent when you're drinking. What's apparent is, like you say, it feels like a friend, because it relieves these negative feelings that it created in the first place.
It created them, right? It created them in the first place. It's an addictive substance. It's just like smoking. So I just watched a relative. She was in her 70s, but she continued to smoke. She got lung cancer, and she was still smoking. So it was like, here she is, she got lung cancer. And you think, on what planet does that make sense, that you're going to continue to smoke? But yet, how is that different from alcohol? No. It's not. I picture it too, like I sort of personified the alcohol. Like, the alcohol to me is like an unruly tenant in my body and brain that I kicked out. Nice. And the only way it can come back in is if I drink some formaldehyde. I look at it like formaldehyde now. Yeah. That's what alcohol is like. But that's the only way that it would come back in. But it's an unruly tenant that will ruin everything in my house.
Absolutely. And if you think about, the formaldehyde example, I love that, because that's alcohol, pure alcohol, you couldn't even, if you drank one sip of pure alcohol, you would throw it back up immediately. Even 100 proof is a very relatively small percentage of actual alcohol. And that is ethanol. That is what fuels your car. There's no planet in which alcohol, repeatedly drunk, is good for the human body. It just it doesn't exist. But anyway, so this has been just awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say to people who are kind of on the fence or feeling afraid? Or
so I don't know. So the 30-day challenge, I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of girl. So I don't know that I would have been happy with committing to 30 days, but I think that's a good place to start. And I would love it if it was just cool to suddenly quit drinking alcohol and be like, yeah, you go. That would be cool, like if society could view it that way. And I just hope that, it's interesting because you come from a marketing background, right? So you talk about marketing of alcohol in your book. I wonder, I remember when I was a kid, we could get candy.
Oh yeah,
candy cigarettes. Yeah. I love those things, right? So I don't know if it's going to become outlawed a bit to stop making alcohol seem so attractive to you. That would be a good thing.
Well, in the UK, they can't advertise alcohol.
Oh, really?
Nowhere, yeah.
Wow.
And all the pubs close at 11 p.m. And there are all these things the government have put in place because, if you look at drinking trajectories, I think the UK has gone over. And the amount of awareness that's happening right now, the amount of businesses sort of springing up, the amount of alternatives. They just had their first mindful drinking festival, which was an alcohol-free drinks, so alcohol-free wines and spirits and just still socializing.
Oh, wow.
So there's a huge amount of awareness happening in the UK right now because exactly that reason. It became a health crisis to the point where the hospitals started talking to the government about doing something about it because of how much money they were spending just on healthcare for alcohol-related diseases. It was, truly tragic. But we're still on that upswing in America. It's still quite cool to drink. And recently, alcohol started being put into movie theaters where it wasn't before, and
Right.
all sorts of places. So
that would have been our criteria for picking a movie theater, actually.
Yeah,
was whether it's served.
Yeah, exactly. I think other thing that you say that is so interesting is just if we believe that there's so much evidence that shows everything you said, that there's just no benefit, right? But if we believe that there is, like neuropsychologists, they all agree on this phenomenon that we create what we anticipate. Mm-hmm. And so our entire culture is stacked against us. Our entire culture and our personal experiences is telling us that it will be difficult and painful to quit drinking. And so we anticipate that and we create it. And honestly, with the right tools, thankfully, it doesn't have to be so difficult. So I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story, because it's just so encouraging for people to hear, just that it doesn't have to be hard. It can be beautiful.
It's a wonderful thing.
This has been Annie Grace with This Naked Mind podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more at thisnakedmind.com. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, as it really helps us spread the word.